Hi guys, Melissa Johnson back with you again today, and I thought that I would do like a really fun, oops, I bumped the camera. Thought that I would do a really fun video, just going over a few of my favorite books. I am not a reader. My hair is doing weird things. I am not a reader. Even in school, I was not a reader. Like, I went to a private Christian school, so we had to do like book reports and stuff, and you guys, I'm terrible. I would read the Cliff Notes because I absolutely hated reading. And I did a lot of my stuff like based on Cliff Notes. I was terrible. But there are a few books in my stash that I have actually read, but I just wanted to share with you guys in case you guys are avid readers. And some of these books I know you've never heard of. Some of them you probably think they're one thing, but they're actually another, because I actually was curious. So I just thought that I would take a little time today, and it's snowing, and I just thought that I would share today some of my favorite books. I'll get to them all each. But my favorite books so far that I have ever read, ever. And these I did audibly, or else, I mean, for me to sit down and read all of these would be crazy. Like, I can't even imagine. But I audibly did the whole Harry Potter series. I have the actual books, but I audibly did the whole series, and they're literally the best books that I have ever read, ever. My favorite being the last one. This is my very favorite of all of them. And they start out like with book one. It starts out very juvenile, so don't read book one, which is so little compared to book 7. Don't read book 1 and think, okay, like, this is kind of juvenile. Literally, they get better and more mature as they go. Of course, Harry matures as time goes too, but they're so well done. Literally, I cried every single book. Audibly, yes, I cried every single book. Now, perhaps because my best friend who passed away 3.5 years ago, perhaps because I saw her in every single book, and maybe that's why I cried so much. I was just looking, sorry, I got distracted. This copy here is pretty worn. This one is pretty worn, so I might have to get a better copy of that particular one. But anyways, I'm sorry, I digress. But they're so well done, so well done. It's my understanding that when J.K. Rowling wrote them, she had the last book written first, and she did them backwards, I believe, or else she started with book 1 knowing the ending. But there are Easter eggs in every single thing, and it's kind of like if you've ever seen the movie The Sixth Sense by M. Night Shyamalan. It's like you don't realize what's happening until the end. Well, even Signs, the movie Signs by M. Night Shyamalan, I kind of think he's a little brilliant, but that movie, even though it's a scary movie, I'm scared of aliens, but these books are like those where you don't realize what's happening until the end, and it all comes together, and you're like, oh my gosh. So like at the end, everything all comes together, and the things that you should have picked up along the way were little hints, and it all pieces itself together at the end. I just think it's absolutely brilliantly done. And I'm just so in love with that series. Now, I also did Twilight. I liked books 1, 2, and 3. I hated book 4. Hated it. That was not romantic. It's terrible. Anyways. So, Harry Potter is my absolute favorite books ever. My second favorite book Is it my second favorite? My top 3. I actually think that my second favorite was my original favorite until I read Harry Potter. Audibly read Harry Potter. But I audibly read this book too. And this is 11/22/63 by Stephen King. This is not scary at all. It's zero scary. So if you so it's not scary. So don't assume that this one is scary like a lot of his stuff. It's really not scary at all. I think this was after his accident. These were the ones that some of the ones that I like were done after his accident. And I think, I don't know. I don't read a ton of Stephen King. I have read 2 books. This one, I swear every kid in school should have to read this book. It should be mandatory. And the reason being, and why I think this book is so brilliant, I got it because I thought it was kind of neat, writing from the perspective of what if you could go back in time and change history, and what if Kennedy didn't die. I was intrigued by that, and it's an amazing story. The lessons learned in it are so spectacular. It's left such a huge impact on me because it's not so much about like I thought it was going to be, like how that would turn out differently. Basically, the lesson that you learn from this book is why you probably shouldn't, why it's better to not go back in time and change history. Leave it the way it was designed. Fate designed it to be, I guess, because sometimes when you change things, it sets off like a whole chain reaction of things that change. And sometimes that's not always better. Like maybe one thing was better, but then other bad things happen in place of. It's so well done, you guys. It made me laugh. It made me cry. A surprise. I think most of these books here made me cry. Maybe I'm just emotional. I don't know. But it was so beautiful. Like, it's different stories. Okay, there's this story, but there's also stories within the story. So it's like he goes back in time and he meets people and he tries to change things and how that sets off chain reactions. And then he has to like go back and start all over. It's amazing, you guys. And I was left with such a huge impression on, and I think that so many times people waste time in their lives thinking, I should go back. I wish I could go back and change things. I myself do that a lot. But this book helped me realize that things happen for a reason and leave it be. They happen for a reason and trust the reason that they happened. So I highly, highly, highly recommend this book. Highly. It's so good and it's funny and it's emotional and it's just, it left a huge impact on me. So I've not seen the miniseries or whatever is on Netflix or HBO or one of those. Like, I've never seen that. I just audibly read this book and it's incredible. My very favorite book of all time, before I read Harry Potter, and now I think it's my second favorite book. I love true stories, you guys, so it's interesting that that these two became huge favorites of mine. And I actually really like 1, 2, and 3 of Twilight. I just don't like the last book. I love, love, love true stories, and I especially love animal true stories. So my favorite book of all time is Modoc by Ralph Helfer. This is the best book I have ever read, and it made me cry. All the animal ones always make me cry because they're always kind of sad. I don't know why that is, but Ralph is a well-known Hollywood animal trainer, and one of my other favorite books that he does is Zamba, and this is the true story of the greatest elephant that ever lived. I think that this is such a wonderful, wonderful book. Amazing. Love this book too. But this is about Ralph and training Zamba. Zamba was the MGM studio lion, and that's his daughter. There's a picture of Zamba when he was little. This is a beautiful book. Beautiful. I love this. But I love this one more, and this is not about Ralph. This is the true story of the greatest elephant that ever lived. And you guys, although this story is about an Asian elephant, African elephants are my all-time favorite animal. And this story, well, let me just say, spanning 7 decades and 3 continents, Modoc is one of the most amazing true animal stories ever told. Raised together in a small German circus town, a boy and an elephant form a bond that would last their entire lives and would be time-tested again and again. Through a near-fatal shipwreck in the Indian Ocean, an apprenticeship with the legendary Mahout elephant trainers in the Indian teak forests, and their eventual rise to circus stardom in the 1940s New York City. Modoc is a captivating true story of loyalty, friendship, and high adventure to be treasured by animal lovers everywhere. And I will not spoil this ending, but basically Ralph met the boy that grew up with Modoc. They were born on the exact same day. This boy, his parents were circus performers, so that's why he grew up with Modoc. And they were born together, they were raised together, they were best friends. And elephants are amazing, amazing animals. They have so many thoughts and feelings. They have huge brains. So I'm absolutely obsessed with like how emotional elephants are, how compassionate elephants are. And this is just the story of these two that have been, that fate tried to separate them several times. And they always seem to come back together. And Ralph met them at the end of their journey, and he wrote this story about it. And it's one of the best books I have ever read. It will always be one of my all-time favorites. Harry Potter is probably my very favorite just because it was so brilliantly done. But this one is my second favorite, and then probably 11, 22, 63 is my third favorite, and then maybe Zamba. But best book I've ever, and I actually read this one. Took me a while, but and I actually read Zamba. So I love this book, and I cannot recommend it enough. I got it from Barnes and Noble. Same with Zamba. So highly recommend. I think 11, 22, 63 I got from Barnes and Noble too. Or else this one came from Books A Million or something. But now this story is the first book that I myself ever actually read. And I read this in school. I'm pretty sure I was in 8th grade. Yes. I was in 8th grade when I had to do a book report. And I actually read this book, Born Free. And it's the true story of Elsa the lion. I'm sure y'all have seen the movie. I've seen the movie too, but the book is way better. Same with the Harry Potter. The movies leave out so many things that the books have so much rich, glorious detail. Please read the books. Please, it's worth it. And the reason I could do it like with Audible, I felt like a rock star because I was still doing other things while listening to the books. And I felt like I accomplished way more than just sitting for hours and hours and hours and just reading. I was multitasking, and yet it was things that I didn't have to concentrate on, so I could enjoy the book, cry while I was still doing things. So highly recommend. But Born Free is beautiful. This is probably my 4th favorite book. It's one of the best books I've ever read, and I read this in school, and I was so enamored with it. It's a true story of how Joy and George Adamson were he was a game reserve, what are they called? He worked on the game reserve out in Kenya, and the mother was killed, and so there were 3 little orphaned lioness cubs, and George brought them home, and Elsa's 2 sisters were, I think, taken to a zoo, and they kept Elsa. I wanted to, until I found my daughter's name, Cassie, and I thought that that was so unique at the time. I really was thinking about naming my daughter Elsa just because of this book. Like, I love that name, and there's a cardinal right out the window. This is a beautiful book, and it's amazing to me how even after they set her free, and they worked so hard to set her free, and it's so difficult, they finally set her free, and they come back to see her, and she remembers them, and it's like time hadn't escaped, and it made me cry. So, surprise, I'm a crier, I guess. But I highly recommend Born Free if you've never read it and you love true animal stories. Then I have a few other books. Now, some of these I read in school. So one of the books that we had to read for school, and I actually really liked it because I didn't get the symbolism, even though they tried to teach us about it. I think this was the 6th grade, that, or maybe 7th grade. I don't know. One of these, we had to go over this book, and cannot remember if the teacher read it to us. I think she did in 6th grade, but it's Animal Farm by George Orwell. I loved it in school because it was like animals. So it was like a story about animals, and I'm a huge animal lover. And this book has always stuck with me. And I love that there's another book in here that the teacher read to us. I did not cry with this one, but I don't know, like, I guess it has to do with communism or something, but for me in school as a kid, I thought it was a great book. It held my attention, which was really difficult to do. When I got the Cliff Notes on almost everything else, To Kill a Mockingbird and Animal Farm, I did not get the Cliff Notes. So I actually like this book. So it stuck with me after all these years. And this one was definitely 6th grade, and even the guys in our class cried over this book, so I don't feel so bad. But the teacher read this one to us too, Where the Red Fern Grows. If you have never read this book, you have got to read this book. It will forever stay with me. It's for the millions who love The Incredible Journey, which I saw that movie, and Old Yeller, which that movie makes me cry too. A heartwarming tale of adventure and friendship that you'll never forget. It's about this boy and these 2 dogs, and what happens with these 2 dogs. And I will not spoil this book because you need to read this book. This is one of the best books ever. And this book has also stuck with me through school. I don't remember many books from school, but this one and Animal Farm and To Kill a Mockingbird, which I had a copy and I don't think I do anymore, but they have stuck with me. So I highly recommend Where the Red Fern Grows. And if you have kids, maybe not this one, read this one for yourself first. I don't know. I didn't get the whole communism thing when I was in school, even though the teacher tried to tell us. It was just an animal story to me, and I really enjoyed it. Black Beauty was another one that I read in school and really liked and made me cry. But so when I was in school, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think what triggered me to read this book. Well, I know what triggered me, but I'm just trying to think of what started all that. But in school, boy, it's really snowing and blowing out there. But I hate to say that my town does not have, we do now more than when I was younger, a lot of people of color. So you hear about like Malcolm X and all that stuff, and it might have been when the movie was coming out with Denzel Washington. Love that movie. But I think it was before then. And I've always loved like Motown and all that stuff. So I was like, you know, the whole controversy with Malcolm X and not liking white people or whatever, which I was like, I want to know this story. And I was in high school. I want to know this story from his perspective because he has a book out there. I fell in love with this book. And you guys, I cried. I cried over this book too. I absolutely love and adore this book. I love Malcolm X. I completely, from reading this book, and I read this book. I completely understand his side of the story and how, you know, why back in the 60s and stuff, well, 40s, 50s, 30s, 40s, 50s, into the 60s, like how everything that he went through, like how he could feel that way. And then through his religious journey with Muslim faith and how that completely changed his outlook and everything. And he stopped hating white people, which I thought was really cool. He just saw them all as people. And then that tragically was controversial for his faith at this. I hate to describe the whole book, but I love this book. And I felt so bad for him because he was going against, at the time, that religious sect of faith, and he had kind of gone off on his own with God loves everyone, or Allah as they call him. God loves everyone, and so it caused a lot of controversy, and he ended up being assassinated in front of his family, his wife and his kids, his pregnant wife and his kids. Oh my gosh, it was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. Bawled my head off. I love this book. One of the best books I've ever read. In school, mind you. That's a big book for me. Like, these aren't that big. Like, even Born Free, it's not that big. This was a big book for me, and I was totally enthralled with the whole thing. I love this book, and before you form any opinions, I highly recommend reading this book, reading it from his perspective, because I was a huge fan after reading this book. So, highly recommend. And then another book that I read right after that, because I was so enthralled with his story, was another true story, Black Like Me. I don't know if you've ever read this, but it was a very interesting perspective of this man. He was white. I know it's controversial now to do such a thing, but this was back in the 60s, 40s. No, it was late 50s, 60s. It was 59 is the one date in here. But he wanted to see what it was like to be like a Black person back then. And so he did he used like shoe polish to transform his skin, just so he could see what it was like to be treated like a Black person back then. I cried over this book too, absolutely bawled. This is such a good book if you've never read it and you want to learn like perspective of people that have gone through racism and all of that. I highly recommend these books. I love this book. This one has stuck with me. I read this in school too. Loved it, cried. But I seem to cry over most of them. And then one that I have not actually read the book, but this is one of my and I do have the book because I would like to actually sit down and actually read the book. But one of my favorite stories of all time ever is Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. My favorite version ever, and don't laugh at me, is A Muppet Christmas Carol. We watch it every Christmas. My daughter and I cry every time. Here I go with the crying. The Muppet Christmas Carol with Michael Caine. Oh my gosh, it's so good. And the music is amazing. And the Muppets are adorable. I love this story. I've seen it with Charlton Heston. Who's that? I don't remember. There's so many versions of this story. It's my favorite thing ever. And whenever our town, like we live in a town with a Struthers Library Theater or like the Warren Players Club, people do plays. Like the Warren Players have done it and the Struthers Library Theater has done it. And with a guy that works at the bank, John Beard, he's amazing. He was in A Christmas Carol. They did The King and I. It was lovely plays. But I love this so much, and they quote it so much that I'm just like, I feel like I know this whole thing, but I actually, when I sit and read this book, I might audible it. But I just love, love, love this story. Y'all know A Christmas Carol, we have to. So, and then Dale said I needed to include this one. I've actually read the entire Bible. I think, I've heard it said before that this was a New York Times bestseller before there was a New York Times bestseller list. So yeah, I've read the Bible. It was a great book. So, for those of faith, you know, highly recommend. And even if you're not of faith, it could be helpful. So, yeah, that's a good one. And each time you read it, different things pop out at you. That's what's kind of cool about the Bible. So, just thought I'd do honorable mention. And then one of the books that made a huge impact on me, and it's the reason why I have all these little, well, one of the reasons I have all these like Buddha statues. I love Jesus. Okay, so, but Buddhism is a philosophy. It wasn't really meant to be a religion. If you ever see, there's a whole series, what's a movie that you can get? I think I saw it on, I think you can get it off Amazon. But, I'm trying to think, did I see it on Netflix or one of those? I don't know, somehow I saw it. And it was, the story of Buddha, and it was narrated by Richard Gere. And it's lovely. It's the actual story of the actual man and his, coming to faith, like how he was this prince and he left his wife and his child to pursue spiritual faith. Like, so he tried different faiths, you know, he tried, one where, I don't know, he just tried different faiths. And because he was so sheltered as a prince, like he had never seen death and he had never seen hunger and poor people. And so he left and he went outside of the kingdom for some reason, and he saw like a dying person and a hungry person and a poor person. And he was like, wait, you know, there's more to life than just my kingdom and my riches and all this. So he went on this, he left everything and he abandoned everything to go on this faith journey and to find the faith. And he tried different things and they just didn't work for him, and he was left wanting. And he was just kind of distraught. And he sat under this Bodhi tree, and he found enlightenment, so to speak, they call it. But to me, it's just, you know, the little light bulb went off in his head, and he realized that, you know, Buddhism, which follows a lot of stuff in here, the actual, what the Buddha the man came to, and then he was like, oh my gosh, like, and in the story, Siddhartha, he felt like God was telling him to go and tell people. And he had almost died in this one thing where you can only eat a grain of rice a day, and he got so thin and everything. And it was like this very restrictive faith. I can't remember the name of it offhand. And, you know, he was like, they're going to make fun of me. You know, I struggled with, you know, with this for so long. And so he's like, okay, so he obeys, and he goes and he tells people, and they make fun of him and they ridicule him. And he's like, it doesn't matter, because I found enlightenment for myself, and I'm just going to share because I feel like God wanted me to share. And so I'm going to share. And he started like this, I don't know if you call it a temple, really, but you know, and then like, he was just sitting there teaching all of the things that he had come to know, like when the light bulb went off, and all of this wisdom. I just love the wisdom of the Buddhist teaching, and I just find so much peace. And I found this in we went to go see Washington, D.C. when the kids were little, really little. And I had to go to the bathroom. And so my daughter and I went into the one Smithsonian Institute. It was like an Asian museum. And we went kind of in the back door in there because it was open. And everything's free out there, so it's not like you had to pay to get in. But, and there's a gift shop, and then there's a restroom. So we went to the restroom, we hurried out, and I couldn't not stop at the gift shop, and I was just so enamored. I could see kind of a little bit some of the just amazing vases and things, like oriental vases, and just beautiful, like from Chinese dynasty kind of things. Or it was just gorgeous. But I didn't have time because, you know, my ex at the time, my stepson, were out there waiting, and I knew that they'd get frustrated if we took too long, so I just had to pop into the gift shop. So I found this book, and the way that I always approach things, and I don't mean to make things spiritual, I guess, but when you have, I just wanted to share a little bit in case someone has the same, sorry, my phone is saying low battery, just in case someone has some of the same faith in common or whatever. But I always approach things like, okay, God, like, I don't know what this is about, but if this is of you, show me, because I don't have time to really explore this. But if it's, you know, not of you, let me know, and I'll put it back. So I happened to open some of these pages, and like this one in particular, everyone goes through the meadow, but only few see the flowers. Oh, that's so wise and deep to me. I love that. Treasure the blessed gift of your life. And I was like, that's beautiful. Like, yes, they talk about reincarnation, but maybe they take reincarnation literally, like if the Bible per se, like, says, born again, you know, and it's more of like a metaphorical for, biblical standpoint, and they might take it more literally. So I can, sorry, my phone cut me off. I don't know why. So I can, you know, weed through the things that are meant for me, and, you know, maybe toss aside the things that aren't for me. So it's okay to me that they might take it more literally and we take it more metaphorically. But, like, I just want to find something in particular. Let all that you do be done with love. Like, and the Bible talks about doing things like, faith, hope, love, the greatest of these is love. Love one another as I have loved you. Like, that kind of stuff. I was like, okay, that kind of matches up with what, you know, I think. I just want to, like, the light of love and compassion is eternal. Like, to me, that sounds like something, you know, biblical. Or, kindness and gratitude is the path of love. Like, to me, that just sounds so much like the kind of things that I find in this book. So I just really, really love this book, and I didn't have time to go through it. But anger only exists where there is a lack of love. Like, I just love the depth and the wisdom of these little tiny, just one sentence things. I just wanted to find one in particular, kind of like that I saw. And let all that you do be done with love. You know, do things for others without expecting any reward. Like, you cannot change the world, but you can change yourself. And I'm trying to find one in particular. Like, that I would have seen that made me just pick up this book. But it's full of these wonderful little, like, tidbits, one sentence tidbits of wisdom. Like, they say everything they need to say in one sentence, and I think it's beautiful. Most troubles are only a small passing storm. I love that so much. Like, it says everything you need to say in a sentence, and I think it's just so wise, and just, I love it. So I cannot find what I'm looking for right off the bat, of course. Of course not. Well, anyways, every once in a while, they have something that actually like seek harmony with others, for we all share the same destiny, which is death in the end. None of us makes it out alive. But there are, every once in a while you'll see, oh, it is true, we all reap what we sow. Buddha was like 500 years before Christ. I'm like, wow. Like, to me, like, it's like, maybe he really did find God under that Bodhi tree. And, you know, like, the actual man Buddha, not what turned into, like, a religion or something. It's as now the late Thich Nhat Hanh, he just died recently, and I really, really love him. He does a book, Living Buddha, Living Christ, and matching up like how the Bible and Buddhist teachings, like how Jesus's teachings and the Buddha's teachings were so similar that they would have been like best friends. And they would have really enjoyed each other's company. I love that so much. They shared so much in common that I'm like, you know, how do we know God didn't like give him wisdom under that tree and say, go share it with people? And he did. And this was 500 years before Christ. He accepted women. Back then, there was like, you know, women were lower than men in that, well, we know this through history. Women's rights and stuff was way after this. But, so they were considered a lower class, and there was a system of classes back then in India. And, so Buddha like accepted the women in his temple, I guess, where he was the teacher, but everyone would come in, and there were no classes. There was no rich, there was no poor, there was no female or male, there was no differentiating. I love that. Like, everyone was equal. I love the story. I think it's lovely. And every once in a while they talk about God, like they actually say God, and I wish I could find one. But of course you find everything but the one that you're looking for just to make your point. But I just thought this was a really wonderful little book. I loved its little wisdoms in there. So this is one of my favorites too. And then the last one, I was just really quick going to share with you guys my all-time favorite Edgar Allan Poe poem of all time. And in school we read some of these, so I bought this whole little book, but the only reason that I bought this was because it has my all-time favorite, 436, it has my all-time favorite poem ever by Edgar Allan Poe. And supposedly, and I'm sure it's true, historically, it says he married his 13-year-old cousin, which is weird because I don't know how old he is, but I'm pretty sure he was older than, way older, which is kind of weird. His wife Virginia died early, and Poe sank into deep depression and reliance on drink that have scarred his reputation and dominated the interpretation of his work. He himself died in mysterious circumstances in 1849, and the details of his biography remain controversial and disputed. But he was so in love with his wife. But I swear that this poem is written about her, and it's the most beautiful poem. And I just, bear with me really quick while I read it. If you're interested in this will be the end. That's the last thing that I have to share. So this I got from Barnes and Noble. Sorry, I always put an S on the end. Tale and Poems of Edgar Allan Poe, but it's called Annabel Lee. And it goes like this. It's only 1.5 pages. These are tiny pages. It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea that a maiden lived whom you may know by the name of Annabel Lee. And this maiden, she lived with no other thought than to love and be loved by me. I was a child and she was a child in this kingdom by the sea. But we loved with a love that was more than a love, I and my Annabel Lee. With a love that the winged seraphs of heaven coveted her and me. And this is the reason that long ago in this kingdom by the sea, a wind blew out of a cloud, chilling my beautiful Annabel Lee, so that her highborn kinsman came and bore her away from me, to shut her up in a sepulchre in this kingdom by the sea. The angels were not half so happy in heaven when envying her and me. Yes, that is the reason, as all men know, in this kingdom by the sea, that the wind came out of the cloud by night, killing and chilling my Annabel Lee. Or I'm sorry, chilling and killing my Annabel Lee. But our love, it was stronger by far than the love of those who were older than we, of many far wiser than we. And neither the angels in heaven above, nor the demons down under the sea, can ever dissever the soul from the soul of my beautiful Annabel Lee. For the moonbeams never beamed without bringing me dreams of the beautiful Annabel Lee, and the stars never rise, but I see the bright eyes of the beautiful Annabel Lee. And so, all the night tide, I lie down by the side of my darling, my life and my bride, in her sepulchre there by the sea, in her tomb by the sounding sea. Is that not the sweetest? A little dark and haunting, but I just think it's so beautiful, and it's all by the ocean, my favorite thing. So if I were to pair wax with this, totally Atlantic air and mix Atlantic air and sand swept. That's my favorite mix that I've done together, is sand swept and Atlantic air. So melt that wax and just enjoy that beautiful little poem there by Edgar Allan Poe. I love Baltimore, so of course that's where Edgar Allan Poe lived. And they have a museum there about Edgar Allan Poe. I know he does some dark things, kind of like Stephen King, but I thought that was the most beautiful poem ever. So I had to share. And so hopefully that was fun, just to see some of the few books that I have read. I wouldn't have gone through half as many books if it hadn't been for audible.com. No, they are not sponsoring this video. I'm just a huge supporter. And just thought that I would share in case you guys love to read. There is one book that I will mention that the movie is actually way better than the book. And it is Stephen King. I love the movie Hearts in Atlantis by Stephen King, and I also really want to read The Green Mile, because that's by Stephen King too. And if it's anything like 11/22/63 or the movie, I'm in. But Hearts in Atlantis, don't read the book. It's awful. And you guys know I have this weird fear of aliens, which, you know, anyways. So the movie with Anthony Hopkins and David, he's from St. Elsewhere. What is his name? Doesn't matter. It's such a lovely movie. I love the movie Hearts in Atlantis. It's one of my all-time favorites. The book was awful because it's just the first chunk of the book is like the movie, and then it goes into this whole thing of where, you know, Carol and Bobby grow up, and it gets kind of weird, and it's like, okay, and the end is awful, and it's got aliens, and I do not recommend that book at all. If you like aliens and aliens don't freak you out, then maybe you'll like it, but I did not like the book at all. Totally ruined everything because I was hoping it would be everything that the movie is, and it was awful. So I just thought that I would mention that. But just putting that out there. Don't read Hearts in Atlantis, only watch the movie. And that's one of the few things that I will ever say, that the movie is better than the book. So that's just my opinion. All right, guys. So I just thought that I would share. Sorry, my video got cut off. That was weird. And I hope that was entertaining. All right. Bye, guys.